Hello, and welcome to IndieViews. As always, I am your host, Connell Suter, and thank you very much for checking out the show. If this is your first time tuning in, on IndieViews, we speak to incredible indie developers about their upcoming and early access games. Today is no different. We've had the pleasure of speaking to Nathan Montgomery from 2TG Entertainment about their new game, To the Grave, The Wildlands of Faenora. Now, The Wildlands of Faenora is a beautiful, sleek strategy RPG that will be very familiar to fans of games like Final Fantasy Tactics and Ogre Battle, with you as the player taking control of a group of various fantasy fighters battling your way through a progression of levels, choices, and biomes. On top of that, Wildlands of Faenora is actually a roguelike with lots of cool but interesting and difficult decisions to make about where you go with your party, how you build it out, everything like that. It sounds super, super cool. Nathan gives us a fantastic run through of those roguelike features, as well as more details on the game, what you can expect from the early access release, the kind of biomes, enemies, items, and characters that you'll encounter, and some really interesting insights into how 2TG are able to leverage blockchain to enhance aspects of the game, but also how you don't need to interact with that at all if you don't want to. It's a really interesting setup that they've got. The interview was a ton of fun, and of course a huge thanks to Nathan for joining me. But in any case, I'll get out of the way. Awesome. We're here with Nathan Montgomery of 2TG Entertainment. Nathan, how's it going?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
No, not at all. It's an absolute pleasure, mate. So I guess before we jump into talking about To the Grave, The Wildlands of Faenora, that's the game we're here to discuss today, could you give us a little bit of background on yourself and 2TG Entertainment?
Yeah. So my background is a bit more unusual for a game developer and game development studio. I was a lawyer and still am a practicing lawyer. I did corporate finance and securities law at a big national law firm in Canada, and then jumped out from there, and I was head of legal for a small private bank, and then got involved a little bit in the blockchain space for a while, and head of legal for one of the first regulated cryptocurrency exchanges in Canada. And so I understood some of that side of things. And actually we started 2TG Entertainment about 2 years ago. Well, no, over 2 years ago now. The time flies. But because I knew about blockchain and I thought, oh, well, this is misused so often in so many different ways. And I saw the video game sector as there was starting to be a bunch of blockchain games coming out. And I was like, well, all of these suck. So that's a big problem. But I've loved video games since I was a kid and had been looking for more awesome tactical strategic RPG games being made, and thought, well, there's an interesting opportunity here to set up a game studio and make the games that I would want to play, and then see if we look at that and add on kind of optional, really limited blockchain features that people could choose to use if they want to, but not if they don't, then see if they would. And that is kind of what led to the creation of 2TG. And then from there, we've gone through a number of iterations, and it's all been around focusing on making the best game first. And all of that other stuff is around, okay, how can we make the game more engaging and more fun in a certain way, but it's never going to be in the way that's going to be shoving it down a gamer's throat of you need to jump through these hoops, because that sucks. That's no fun for anyone. And speaking from experience, I would never do that myself. So that's why we've been focusing on, we've made this really unique roguelike tactics RPG game. We have an alpha demo that's out on Steam. It's out on the browser too. And it's to give people an opportunity to play the game and try it. And there's just so much that we're building with it, which is a long-winded way to say I'm a reformed lawyer turned game developer.
No, it's an interesting route in, man. I mean, it's I think a lot of people in games often regard themselves as not being able to do real things, like real life things. So to move from law is like, well, you've gone from real life things. Very serious.
Yeah, I've done, and I'm also a professional actor as well. I've done a bunch of different things, and using this, and what I found is that there's, life is just a bunch of different puzzle pieces. And as you get different skills and you see different areas of it, then those puzzle pieces start to click together in certain ways. And you don't know until all of a sudden, hey, look at this. This puzzle piece from over here fits really well with this one here. And that's making a whole new vision of what this picture can look like that I wouldn't have imagined before because wasn't able to put those together. So I've had a lot of different experiences that have kind of brought us to this point, which now it's just, well, how can I use what we have to provide the most value in kind of making games and giving people the opportunity to have fun with the games.
That's awesome. I love hearing that, man. I just love hearing about these different routes in, because I think a lot of it's, you go back to high school, right? And you're sitting there in those meetings and they say, well, what do you want your career to be? Decide now. And it's like, well, who knows? And I know people that would leave uni and they were regretting so much that they hadn't done games courses. But this is it. It's not about that. And a lot of the time, the experience you're getting in other areas, hey, running the business is running the business, right? It's not completely unique to games as it is to anywhere else.
Totally. And I still feel like sometimes I'm wondering, well, what am I going to do when I'm grown up? I'm just like, hey, let's try this. Let's see how this goes. Let's just build things and have fun doing it and see if we can provide value.
That sounds amazing. And I love what you're saying about blockchain as well, in terms of, I think you're so right about, unfortunately, the big first slew, as often is with any new technology, is how can we take advantage of it as quickly as possible and almost not making a game, or the game is almost built just around this concept.
Totally. And this is something that's plagued the blockchain industry from the beginning. I mean, starting with cryptocurrency and all of the scam coins, and basically it's just been, okay, fraud wrapped in a new technology. That was something that, as I was looking at blockchain gaming, I was like, well, a lot of these, if it's not that, and at least they're well-intentioned, what they're doing is they're raising money selling some type of cryptocurrency and then saying, oh, and we're going to build a game with it. But their product isn't the game. The product is what they sold. And so then they have a real tough time because I've sold something and I'm trying to deliver something else. How do you meet the expectations of the person that bought your thing when they didn't even know what the product would be? So that means the product that they're thinking that it is likely just, I'm going to make a bunch of money from it. And that already, you have a huge misalignment in, okay, how am I going to make the best game possible with the ideas that we have in mind of what we're going to be doing with it? So that's why for us, we didn't do anything like that. We made the game first. I've funded the whole thing for us to get to this point so we can have that and people can play it and tell us that they like it and tell us what they don't like. And we can keep building and iterating in public and only using those pieces and only have people buy those pieces if they're looking at it, to the extent that they're like, hey, I like this in the game. I like what you're doing with it and it's worth it for me. The same way that you would, pay full price for a game or buy extra DLC because you're like, hey, there's enough value in there for me that I want to participate in that.
No doubt. No, it sounds really cool. I love that. Like game design first, which, 100%. It's easy to forget that isn't always the way. But that sounds amazing.
Well, and it's not the quickest way to make money.
Totally.
That's the challenge, right? Is that you get these, something is being hyped up for some reason that, hey, if you shift directions now, then you're going to be able to make more money because investors are interested in AI, investors are interested in Web3 gaming or whatever. So if you do it in this way now, then you can make money with it. And then once you have that, do whatever you want. Well, that's not really a sustainable approach. And I don't think that's not an approach where you're getting paid for the value you're providing. You're getting paid for, again, an idea that people want to latch onto, and whether well-intentioned or not, that's not what's going to end up coming out. So that's where, for me, this is all about, where do we provide value? And in games, it's in that engaging entertainment experience. It looks different depending on the type of game. So some, it's like, well, the story and narrative needs to be 100% like on point, and the other stuff can trail. Or, hey, the graphics and the gameplay needs to be best, but we're not so worried about the story because it's really just a vehicle to help you play the game. So it depends on the game, but for what we're trying to do, it's always going to be, okay, what's making the game the most engaging that it can be for what we're making.
No, it sounds awesome. That's amazing. No, and that's great. I love that as well, that like totally different games of what is engaging is going to be different things. And it's too easy, right? I mean, I can be bad for it as well. Sometimes you'll play a game from back in the day and you're like, what is this? And you're like, yeah, they weren't focusing on that. They weren't focusing on the story, especially if you think about 70s, 80s, as they were starting out. But that sounds amazing. You're saying you funded it all yourself. So it was real passion. I mean, huge amount of passion in the project.
Yeah, 100%. And it was the only way. Part of it was there are a number of different reasons. So one is, I didn't want it to get off track from being 100% focused on the game. And when I talk with investors more on the blockchain side, they were like, okay, here's how you do it. You know, you're gonna sell these tokens, and then we're gonna get a portion of those tokens, and then you can make the game. I'm like, yeah, but that's not what we're doing. They're like, no, I get that, but that's what we would do. And so I'm like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to waste my time having these conversations anymore. I'm just going to get back to building. And interestingly, also had a number of conversations on kind of the Web 2 side where they're like, I don't trust the blockchain stuff. You know, this isn't something that we want to touch, but if you want to go all in on the Web 2, then we can fire in on that. And that won't answer the question of, if you have a phenomenal game experience to begin with, and you add in deliberately meaningful features with this new technology called blockchain, intended to make that experience deeper or more engaging, what will people do? If we take that out, then there's nothing wrong with being a fantastic traditional video game. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But is there a way that we can at least test in a very legitimate, responsible way what that looks like to actually add those blockchain features in and see if people like it or not? And if they don't, you know, what we've built can be like, okay, great. We'll peel. We won't focus on developing that because it's not getting the engagement that we expect, and we'll iterate on it and figure out, okay, what are people not liking about it, so that we can make sure that there's real value there for anything that we're doing with it. But at least it gives the opportunity to look to the future of, okay, how can we potentially take gaming to the next level in a way that no one's done it before.
That sounds really cool. It definitely sounds like you're finally capitalizing on the early conversations people were having in games with blockchain, which I remember people talking about. They were using World of Warcraft and like swords as an example of being able to craft a weapon and seeing the history of it and seeing all this. And you're like, all those people are still making the same arguments because no game has ever actually taken that angle, as you say, of it's purely there to add and enhance. It's not there to be this like very critical element of you have to engage with it and that's it.
Exactly. It's not shoved down your throat that you might like this game in spite of that. It's something that people are like, oh, this is actually a feature that I like how they do it. And that's also been a tough thing is we're talking to people. We can't be like, oh, well, look at how this game does it. That's exactly the framework that we're using in the same way, because you don't have that. I haven't seen that in practice yet. And whether we're going to be one of the first to do it, that's the hope. But it's everything that we're doing as well is with a long-term view of not just, oh yeah, we'll be a flash in the pan first to do it, and then okay, everyone else is going to come up with their stuff, but at least we did ours. We have a pretty expansive vision for the game itself, and other things that we've been working on, and concepts that we have of how we can continue to expand and build on that if people really like it and really get into it.
Sounds amazing. I love that. It sounds like real innovation. I have a friend who, we're very happy to hear this, he begrudges that he feels every year games discussion becomes more and more about when you're describing a game to someone, people will just say, it's like this game meets this game. And it really does feel like it's happening more and more. And it sounds great that you're in a position that you can't do that. So congratulations.
Yeah, it's tough because people are expecting it now.
Totally.
Right? And so a lot of how we describe Wildlands of Faenora is it's Final Fantasy Tactics meets Slay the Spire, because at least it gives people a framework for it.
Totally.
But I mean, that's even more so in the blockchain space, because typically it would be something like, oh, it's like Call of Duty, but with blockchain. It's like Fortnite, but with blockchain. And you're like, well, then where's your creative expansion of whatever they're doing to help as a creative medium, as an entertainment going forward? And really, like, if you're trying to compete against one of those big blockbuster games that has honed that formula with hundreds of millions of dollars at least of development time and player feedback over like decades, you're not going to be able to do it by just saying, yeah, it's that, but with blockchain. That's unrealistic to expect that's how you're going to be able to get it. And so for us, it's been trying to do with however we're approaching it, there needs to be a novel, meaningful reason for the game in its own right. Something that's going to get it out there for people to experience something new, to be engaged in it. I mean, we need to find that right tap into nostalgia. I mean, anyone who's seen our game, there's a lot of really pixel art, nostalgic type art styling that we have. And that's really intentional. First, because I loved those games growing up and wanted to try our hand at how we can capture the essence of that in a way that is uniquely Faenora, but also for someone who doesn't know about us, we're a new studio, they can look at it and immediately understand, okay, yeah, I know those types of games. I've loved those types of games. I'm going to give it a shot. But on the other side, it's also just expanding beyond that, because if it's just a carbon copy, from my own perspective as a gamer, maybe I'll try it and maybe the story will get me through it because it has a different story. But if that's the only difference, then it might not even be enough to keep me engaged long enough, and certainly not to play it after that's done. Because then I will go back to that classic that I loved and been like, oh yeah, I tried this other one and it was pretty similar and I liked it for that time. But, you know, Final Fantasy Tactics is still going to be my go-to if I want to get that classic old school tactics RPG. So need to bring something new, something fresh that is engaging people in a different way.
Totally. Absolutely. Needs innovation, especially with YouTube walkthroughs. Story isn't enough, unfortunately.
Totally.
Right? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, so we've talked a bit around it, but of course we're here to talk about Wildlands of Faenora, which is, as you say, sounds really exciting, tactical roguelite RPG. It sounds incredible. So I guess could you tell us a little bit more about Wildlands of Faenora? What can players expect?
Yeah, so Wildlands of Faenora, I have alluded to it. I often describe it as Final Fantasy Tactics meets Ogre Battle meets Slay the Spire. And if someone actually is familiar with all of those three games, then they're definitely going to love it. But even if not, it's really a pixel art roguelite tactics RPG where every playthrough is different. That's where the roguelite element comes in. So there's a lot of replayability, and the story around it. It starts with you have this hero that meets a wizard in a tavern. It's a medieval fantasy setting, and the wizard says that there's this griffin terrorizing the wildlands, and the first person to defeat that griffin, fame and fortune will fall down upon them, and they will be a legend. And the wizard gives the hero a phoenix amulet that revives them whenever they die. And so for the alpha demo, that's the story framework around it. We have a whole huge lore that we'll be building through 4 chapters of the story for the entire game. But that's what frames the alpha demo. And your gameplay is, you have your hero. At the beginning of every playthrough, you're going to bring on recruits that are in classic RPG fashion, some generic characters that you can class up, like in Final Fantasy Tactics. So you have squires, archers, knights, martial artists, cleric, and witches, and we have more classes that we're looking to expand on. But each of them has their unique strengths and weaknesses and different skills. And then you're going to go off on this adventure to slay this griffin. As you go, you're going to come across a number of different path options. So you're going to either choose to fight monsters. Your middle option is going to be, could be a random thing, from fighting a dragon to finding treasure to healing your characters in a healing spring, or finding a dojo that allows you to promote your classes to better classes. And so what you're going to be doing is, over the course of this, in the alpha demo, it's 20 rounds. And in the story mode, we're going to have a number of different biomes. Once you complete one, then you'd move on to the next chapter that's unique in its own right and has its own different setup. But you need to figure out, how do you optimize your characters based on the path that you take in that run. Maybe you get a bunch of really good equipment, but your recruits haven't leveled as much. And so you need to balance out your strategy and your tactics based on that. And then as you die, you're going to level up your hero, get better classes, level up your classes. And so there's that RPG progression that's baked into a roguelite gameplay loop. And luckily, we find it really engaging. And we've had thousands of people play the alpha demo so far, and they've been finding that unique gameplay loop that kind of mixes those different elements to be pretty fun.
I'm not surprised. It sounds really fun. I mean, you had me from the start. I love any game that has an in-universe logic for why it's a roguelite. Totally. I love that. I love that there's a reason for it. And it's totally exactly what you said. Even just hearing it is, you've mixed things in such a fun way that sounds really unique. And because I love roguelites, yeah. But I think one of the big problems with roguelites is very often they're like one character, so you lose your gear, and who cares about gear? At the end of the day, hey, I'll get it again. But losing characters, losing your party, is a whole other vibe. And that's really cool.
Yeah, and so what we're trying to do with it is take a fresh take in this genre, which is like an isometric squad-based tactics RPG that's kind of turn-based battles, and add in some of that meta progression. So we've gotten some feedback from like hardcore roguelite people. Oh, it's not a true roguelite because I can't beat it in one sitting. Right, because there's an element, and that's also baked into the story of it as well, right? You have this wandering adventurer who sucks when he starts. The reason he gets strong is kind of like any of those death loop movies that you've seen, right? I mean, the Groundhog Day of, you don't know how to play piano when you're starting, but how many times have you gone through this day and now you're a concert pianist? Like, it's that type of a thing. So it's all baked within the lore. And so hopefully, and a lot of the feedback that we've gotten is that we're striking the right balance of it's not too grindy, and certainly there's balancing that we're going to be doing as we get through to early access and then the full launch, to make sure no matter where you are in the story that there's new things to explore. You have a reason to continue going, and you have a reason to be excited about what might come up on the next path.
It sounds amazing. And I don't envy you for having to deal with the roguelite prescriptivists of being like, it's not a roguelite because it's not in space. And you're like, oh, cool, man. That's how we get good games, right?
yeah. And you know what? I mean, and this is something that's, it's fine for people who are like super, hey, this is the way the game needs to be. You know, good on you. If that's the type of game that you love, then you go find those games and you enjoy them. And if this isn't the right balance, then, you know, we're obviously trying to do our best to make sure that it's as engaging as possible, but we're not going to please everyone. And you're going to find people on either end of the spectrum. We also get the same thing from people on the RPG side. They're like, I really like it, but why do we have this roguelite thing to it? Like, I can't stand roguelite games in general, so I might pass up on it. And so it's just going to be a matter of, you know, people trying it out, and that's why it's important for us to give people an opportunity to test it, both for us to learn from the feedback that we've gotten, and we've gotten tons of feedback on this alpha demo, but also for them to see, hey, is this something that I'm interested in and want to keep track of as we keep.
No, it sounds awesome. I love that incorporation of feedback, frankly, and actually is looking for it. And is that, so you're going to be launching in early access, is that the main impetus behind it?
Yeah. So really, our goal with this is kind of building in public is the general idea behind it. Like I have my thoughts and ideas of how I wanted this game to be. And I've had the opportunity and pleasure to bring a team of different people as we've continued to grow, who bring their own skills and talents and experience to the table. And everyone's super passionate about the game that we're making. And it gets all so much better by being able to have them come in and say, hey, this is cool. Have we thought about doing it this way? And so we put out the alpha demo so that I could validate, okay, this gameplay loop that we have, I think that it's a lot of fun. The team's enjoying it. Do other people like it? And if they do, then great. That gives me more confidence as we continue to wrap things up, that we're doing it for good reason. And then the early access is going to be the same type of thing, because I think for us to make the best roguelite tactics RPG that we can, having that feedback loop of, and like, gamers are crazy. Like, they spend so much time and care so much about it that you can't have a better test environment as long as you have thick enough skin to sift through whatever comes out. But like, we had, just with this alpha demo, we've had people play over 20 hours easily. We've had some people play over 100 hours of just our alpha demo because they like the gameplay loop. And having people go through that, I mean, not only testing for bugs, which is obviously helpful when you know, hey, we've had like thousands and thousands of hours being played and people haven't identified a bunch of big bugs, then we can feel pretty confident. But for them to go through that and be like, hey, have you considered this type of thing? Or have you considered more variety here, because I'm on my 100th hour and it's getting a little bit stale, which, like, you know, that's some pretty solid time for an alpha demo. But those are all the types of feedback that we get, and we have a huge laundry list of features that we're looking to add. We have the entire story built out, as I think I've mentioned, over the course of 4 chapters, that really is a solid beginning and end to the story of this wandering hero and the wizard and the larger lore around the kingdom of Faenora that you'll see through that. But it's definitely something that, as we build, we want to be getting that feedback so that we can make sure that the game, when it's fully launched, is as good as it can be with what we have right now.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Sounds like a great reason to do early access, and especially if you're getting hundreds of hours in an alpha demo. I mean, no doubt, man. Like, give them more, you know?
Totally.
Give them something to chew on, yeah.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. And then, so you've said it's split into 4 chapters, and that you've got kind of 20 instances in this alpha demo. But obviously, early access releases can vary hugely on like how much is in it. So like, do you have a plan for how much will be in there, that initial early access build, or?
Yeah, so that's something that we haven't finalized entirely. However, I will say that for that early access build, we would expect the gameplay to be at least 20 hours over the course of that story. And then from there, expand beyond that as we get more feedback, as we can add new things and add new monsters and the bosses, and build out that story to flesh it out and continue to progress that further. So the goal will definitely be to make sure that there's enough content there for people to really be able to dig into it, with the promise. And as we go to early access, we'll be providing a lot more information on, hey, here's where it's at today, here's what you can expect, and here's what's on the roadmap for the next let's say 6 to 12 months, depending on where everything lines up. And the goal is, as we do that, we're going to be getting feedback, we're going to be refining, we're going to be building out further, and just continuing to grow that story, and hope that as people play it with the real story elements embedded in it, that they can really, really dive in and enjoy it.
No, that sounds awesome. It sounds like a really good early access release. And I say that because also I like a game that gives that taste enough. Like 20 hours is like perfect. That's a lot of time to spend in it, but also that's time to spend, and then, hey, take a break from it, come back when there's a lot more.
Totally.
Some of the games that often launch in that early access odd point where you're like, it's almost a full game. And then you play it, and then full release happens a year later, and you're like, well, I can't bother to go back to it. So right. No, I love what you've done.
Yeah.
Although I guess, knowing from the sound of it, the players could turn that 20 hours into 500 hours of playing. So I guess you never know.
Well, that's exactly it. And so we have this. So that's really the story mode that's focused on the the traditional video game side of it. And because of how Steam's requirements are, we have. And how we've built the game, basically, we just pull out a build that has no Web3 features in it, and that's what goes on Steam. And then have look at other distribution methods for a version of that, including browser, that would have that Web3 side of things too, which is, again, in the same universe. But rather than following this hero with the Phoenix amulet, you have a band of mercenaries that you're building out. And there's more resource management on that with the in-game economy that we have on the Web3 side of things, where you're talking about the lore of the Phoenix amulet that brings the hero back to life, the mercenaries don't. So now you have a roguelite game with permadeath, where your mercenaries are basically going out and competing with other mercenaries to kill as many of these monsters as possible. And based on that, you're going to get prizes within that side of the game. And so that's a really solid, again, recurring loop built on that roguelite basis. And that with the current plans that we have for that, compared to the 20 round loop that we have on the alpha demo for the story mode, that has a 51 round loop of increasingly difficult monsters and bosses to get to the end of it, that I fully expect, if anyone wants to build up and get to the end of that and actually beat the boss there, it's probably going to be over 100 hours. So lots of content to dig in, and we've built these systems with a lot of depth to the strategy and the tactics and squad building and everything that you're doing. And interesting too, we added in this customization system that I really love, and I haven't seen it on any isometric pixel art game, where you can change the hairstyles and hair colors, and you have all these extras that you can put on. You know, I loved making a Geralt type, white wolf with the slick back ponytail and scars on his face and a black outfit, and pretended that that's a pixel art Geralt in the world of Faenora. And so stuff like that is we're able to give people more opportunity to have fun and play around in this world. That's something that we want to do.
That sounds awesome. That's like legit though. That's like a real thing I wish more games did, because I think a lot of people can relate to this when you've got a game that you love, but maybe you've got an evening where you want to play the game, but you're like, do you know what? I just don't have enough energy to pay attention to a story, and you want to have that other mode to jump in, especially the fact that it's not just a challenge mode. You're actually competing against other players. Like, there is that element. That's super fun. And then also, as I say, you give the full control there. Hey, bring Siri as well, you know, totally. Bring Yen, do a whole gang. That'd be awesome.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that. That's super cool. And I think you kind of already covered this earlier on about the roguelite elements, because obviously roguelite changes as well, just like early access. So what you hold between runs, and you said that the main character's leveling up is kind of what happens between runs. Are you losing everything else when that happens?
Yeah, so basically there are going to be options as you get further along in the story, but they're going to be costly to be able to pull like a piece of equipment with you. So that's going to build the loot building part. But typically how it works in the roguelite is you're carrying your hero through, and then you die, you lose all of the rest of your squad, you lose all of your equipment, and you start back at the beginning with your hero leveling up. There are class levels as well, so you have class ranks. So you brought some squires on, and now your squires are going to have a new skill unlocked the next time you go. So there's different meta progression that way. And then at the beginning of each run, you also are able to choose a different perk. So you can choose to start out with a treasure chest that's going to give you some equipment, or an experience boost that's going to help you level up faster, or you have more control over choosing the recruits that are going to join you. And so all of those different elements, there's a lot of choice, and as you go, you're going to figure out, okay, for my play style, what's going to be my optimal way to go and grow. And hey, if I get stuck on this boss, well, maybe I need to try to find this specific type of enemy so that I can get enough materials to unlock a device that's going to allow me to carry through a piece of equipment into the next playthrough. But even with those, there's a chance that breaks. And so there's always going to be a give and take with whatever you're doing in the game, and the strategy just kind of layers on itself.
That sounds amazing. As a big fan of roguelites, that sounds like a really nice mix of risk and progression, because I think it's hard to get that right, but I think especially what you said about leveling up the class of your companions, I love that you're rewarding players for like, hey, you've done really well with these squires, cool, then your squires are better, as they should be. That's really cool.
Yeah, totally.
And then you've talked about Faenora a little bit. We talked about a medieval fantasy world, and I guess it might not be split like this, but you said split into 4 chapters. And what kind of biomes are players going to see? Is there any insight to what kind of fantasy world this is?
Yeah, so it's really, I loved the story of Final Fantasy Tactics and the politics that went on in that. So if you would compare the Kingdom of Faenora kind of politically to something going on, I would put it somewhere in that type of a category. And if we can get even close to the epicness of the story from Final Fantasy Tactics, then I will be so happy about it. But what you see in the first biome, which is going after this griffin that that you discover is actually a Netherlord that broke through a gate to the Nether realm that was unsealed by the wizard that gave you this Phoenix amulet. And so when that happened, a number of different monsters and creatures and Netherlords broke through into the kingdom of Faenora. And so that griffin is the first Netherlord that you need to defeat, and the other chapters are based on other Netherlords that you need to go after to close off your adventure as this legendary hero. And so the first biome starts in kind of your typical grasslands, and it goes into, you have forests, you have dungeons, you have the highlands where the griffin's on top of a mountain, and all of this in like really, really phenomenal pixel art backgrounds that are like, the artists that we have on this do such an incredible job of nailing that vibe and that style. And so that's the first biome, is that kind of journey to the top of the mountain to kill this griffin. And the other ones we haven't really announced yet, but we can talk about it, because then we're going to have, basically it's a forest maze that's going to lead you in the next one. The third one is a castle that you're going to be moving towards, and a lot of the details around that will be kind of putting together as we get more information out on the early access. But that's really the progression of that, is going to be hitting a lot of those kind of classic, it's all going to fit in that vibe of, this really fits within this world, and it's all done in a way to tie it all in together nicely and tell a really meaningful story, kind of engaged throughout.
That sounds super cool. And the Netherlords sound really awesome as well. And yeah, what you said about the pixel art, like, I mean, we'll have some shots coming up through the interview, but definitely anybody listening is go and check it out, because it is beautiful pixel art. And it's definitely, it's crazy how pixel art's just so timeless, huh? Like, we just, we can iterate, we can improve, but man, just it captures the imagination in a way that's hard to describe. Yeah,
there's a beautiful simplicity to it, where, I went through a lot of pixel art, a lot of pixel artists, just trying to test out, especially on like a no budget. As I was starting out, I went through like hundreds of pixel artists' profile. First on Fiverr, just trying to find a pixel artist that could hit the right tone for our character art. And then from there is just a lot of, okay, I'll pay you to do this thing and see if it works. Didn't quite fit the vibe, and just iterating and not stopping until I found that right person that really nails that vibe for how to hit that properly. And so we've been so lucky and blessed to have those people on the team and stick with the project. As it started off very contract work of, hey, can you help with this one thing? And hey, they've really nailed it. And how do we keep them engaged, keep them excited? And that's the thing that I think has made this game so special, is that everyone who's working on it really brings a passion and their own expertise and their own flair into it that meshes really nicely. And I think you see that in the game as it's being developed and as you're playing it.
Oh, no doubt. That's lovely to hear, man. That's great. And I totally agree with you about obviously, even like I didn't have to go through tons of artists to find it, but it's almost the live simplicity, right? Like, because pixel art is logically easy to do. I had a mate that used to do it in Excel, and you look at it and go, oh well, I can do that. I can color in some boxes, and then you try it and you go, nah, man. And I'm sure there's a million artists who are like, hey, this isn't that it's bad, but totally, it's little things change. The color they use is going to change that vibe so much.
The color palette, how you shade it, and how you make it detailed enough to be unique, but not too detailed that it loses the charm of the simplicity of it. We've had the privilege of finding really, really talented pixel artists that strike that balance perfectly well for the vibe that we want to bring.
Oh, amazing. That sounds super cool. And I guess we'll see a lot of amazing monsters as well, because you talked about the griffin, and so obviously this mythological like influence there. Like the other monsters, are they also like mythological? And then have you made them up? Or are they like taken from real mythology?
Yeah, it's a good mix. So a lot of them are going to be tied with real mythology, right? So we have what you would expect, like dragons and golems and griffins and all of these types of things, wolves and bears that you'd see out, but also like imps and fairies and tree monsters and all of these types of things that we have planned with ghosts and skeleton warriors. Basically, it's going to be fitting. We're not trying to go outside of the mold of the medieval fantasy world that you would expect, but we want to present it in a cool and engaging way. So, I've seen dragons, but I really like the way that we're doing these dragons and the styling that we have with these dragons and the different types of attacks that they have in game. We have this behemoth monster that's really cool. He's the mini boss of our alpha demo, and that one is, all of it is going to be tied to something that you're immediately going to be like, yeah, I get that within this world, but doing it in a way that is really cool and really Faenora, if we can use that as an adjective.
Well, it's the first time for everything, right?
Yeah, right? Here we go. We heard it here first.
But I love that. I think you're totally right, especially with fantasy worlds, which is, it's almost like you need the silhouette to be right, but when the light shines on them, you want it to be a bit different. But totally, it's almost... Exactly. If you go too far away from it, it starts feeling very contrived as well, right? Where it's like someone's clearly didn't want to add a dragon, but they couldn't think of any other idea, so they've basically made a dragon.
Exactly, and I'm a firm believer in, I don't want to recreate anything that has already been done or established well.
Totally. Because
then we're creating unnecessary difficulty for ourselves and the risk of it not landing when we don't need to, right? So it's really, we want to go all in on the stuff that makes us unique, and outside of that, we want to give you the feeling that you know what you're getting when you're coming into it. If you see the art style, okay, you know that this is what you're going to get, and how we present it with different monsters, well, that's going to keep you on your toes of, oh, I didn't know that this type of skill could do this thing. Well, now I need to adjust how I'm working with it. But it's all within the world that for me, it's, going back to my childhood, playing these pixel art games, playing this kind of brings me back into that and gives me that connection back to a younger Nathan loving these games as a kid. I always want you to have this feeling while you're still being engaged in a different way with the story and with the gameplay loop and the different systems that we've put in. So you're always thinking, you're always going to be engaged, but it's going to be, I'm going to say, in the warm embrace of nostalgia and those things that are already settled that don't need to be redefined.
No, that sounds great, man. Totally. It's definitely true. It's like, it takes us all back to being a kid, for sure. I mean, it's, picking up the stick and imagining a dragon. No, that sounds awesome.
Exactly.
I mean, I love what you're saying about like making decisions and it being engaging as well, that it's not just a world you're kind of on. You're really in it and deciding on these things that change it. And you talked a bit ago about the paths that the players are taking. And obviously, I guess you're saying Slay the Spire is an influence. This pathing comes to mind. What does that look like to the player, I guess? And like, what do those decisions feel like? So are they seeing like a map with a load of question marks and they can see roughly where the paths go? Or is it going to be hey, you're at a crossroads in the woods. Which path do you take?
Yeah, great question. So how it's basically leading every round on the playthrough, we'll call it. you're going to come up with 3 options that are presented to you. And so the one is always going to be, okay, you can just fight monsters. And as you get further along, those monsters are going to change. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get tougher. So that's not always a safe bet, especially depending on how you performed in the last battle. And then the middle option is going to change, but you're going to see what it is. You might see, okay, there's this beast, so I know I'm going to be fighting a dragon here if I go in that. I might not know what type of dragon. I might not know if I'm going to be able to survive or not, but I know that the risk is there. Or there's a dojo or a merchant or a healing spring or a treasure chest. And all of those things are going to change. The further along you are, the merchant is going to have better, more expensive equipment and potions. The further along you are, the treasures are going to give you better equipment and better weapons. The dojo, you might find, okay, and this is one thing, if you get a dojo early on, then you're able to upgrade the classes of your recruits early on, and that's going to help you get a lot further because the leveling up is all based on, well, what class are your characters? Your martial artist is going to get a big boost of attack every time they level up, whereas your knight is more of a tank that defends others. So their defense is going to go up, their HP is going to go up. So all of those things are going to be deciding as you progress on. The third option is an unknown path that you won't know what you get until you click on it. So that's the rolling the dice.
I really like that mix because I find as well with the map methods, let's call it, that some games take, is very cool, but it can, Slay the Spire is a great example. Sometimes you feel like every time you're starting a new map, you're having to study it and work out your exact path at the start. And sometimes it's not that dynamic as you go through. Yeah. But I really like that mix you've got of, hey, you're getting to the end and you've got these known options, but that big unknown, and maybe it's going to be that trade-off of like, the unknown's going to be a lot more profitable, but I guess you could also die instantly. So
totally. Yeah, exactly.
That sounds awesome. I really love that. It sounds like a really good mix of different roguelite elements. And then you mentioned earlier on as well, even just then, about classes and these knights and things like this. So are these, you've talked as well about advanced classes. So are they one and the same? Or is a knight an advanced class? Or are you going to be maneuvering it?
The knight would be an advanced class from the squire. So the squire can be promoted into the knight or into the martial artist, which is the fighter. And then the archer can be promoted into a witch or a cleric. And so that's the class tree as we have it right now in the alpha demo. And there's a lot more that we'll be building out to round out that class tree as well, so that there's always a path as you want to build your characters. And one of the things that I loved about games like Final Fantasy Tactics was taking these generic characters and being like, okay, with this one, how do I want to build them? What is the class progression that I want to do? And so what we're able to do with this roguelite loop is create that option every time you do a new playthrough. Is that then you have, again, okay, now let's look at this new batch of recruits that I have. This one came to me with an innate skill that their attack is plus 20%. So I know they're going to be tougher than another one. I'm going to want to use that one and make them a martial artist. And this one has a lot of HP. So I'm going to want to probably put them in our tank. Well, actually, maybe I'm going to want I want a cleric that has a lot of HP because I want to make sure they survive to heal everyone else. And so it's always that dynamic decision making every time you do a new playthrough.
That sounds awesome. No, I love that. It's the great start of a heist movie, right? But you're getting to do it on every run.
Totally.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's it. Build out the gang. Oh, I love that. And then on top of that, as you've talked a bit as well, I think on the Steam page and stuff, about like some unique weapons and these powerful things you're going to be unlocking. Are we going to have seeing stuff like a class unique weapon? Maybe only the knight can carry this shield, or is it going to be a mix of things?
Yeah, so we do have that. So your knights can equip swords, your martial artists can equip fist weapons. Your squires can equip both. So you're also going to be making those decisions based on, okay, I know that on this run, I have a really strong fist weapon, and I might have otherwise made a knight, but I don't want to lose that huge attack from this. So now I'm going to make that change. So we have swords, we have bow and arrow, staffs, fist weapons as well, and there's other things that we're looking to do with that as we continue to build out. But that's definitely an element to it.
That sounds awesome. And I guess, as you say, with early access and building it out, who knows, maybe we'll end up with some crazy squire hybrid that comes off that's somewhere between a cleric and a martial fighter that some great suggestion has in 6 months.
So I will say that we have some features in the mix that will add for further options to in a sense make a knight that has subclass like skills to replicate a cleric or something like that. So we definitely have additional features as we're looking to build it out of how can we give you the chance, because that's a big part of the roguelite is, okay, are you going to come across this where it's going to be available to you, to continue to build out these characters and customize them in unique ways, not just with their equipment, not just with how you class them up, but also with skills and with their look and everything kind of in between.
That sounds super cool. It's like you've taken the good part of D&D and not the annoying part. It sounds super cool. Reminds me of a game. It was a great indie game called Wildermyth, which is almost an approximation of kind of something like D&D. And in that, you've got a similar kind of element of that being able to take a couple of skills and being like, hey, maybe my ranger is actually a little bit better in melee than the average. Always makes it feel a bit more personal, doesn't it, later in the game?
Exactly. And that's something that we'll be exploring in the story mode too, is that you have this hero, right? And you get these generics that join you, and then they die, and then your hero continues on, and then those generics die again. And something that we'll be touching on is this idea of, you don't even think about it as a player, but how many people have you brought along with you that you just left to die in the Wildlands, and you're like, doesn't matter, I'm coming back to life, so sorry guys, right? And building out with our lore, trying to really capture the essence of that world on a deeper level of, what's actually going on here. Let's just take a step back and think of this logically. Like, that's kind of crazy, right? What's going on, and how can we build the interactions and also make it important as you're making those decisions as you get further on in the game, and you're like, hey, I've had these characters with me. So it's just really building out the lore of how this loop actually would look like in real life too, and trying to allude to that, because it's it would be hard to make friends if you're like, hey, this guy keeps coming back, but everyone who goes with him, like, we never see them again. What's the deal with this? So we'll look to try to explore, have a kind of deep, meaningful character building across the whole game.
That sounds super fun. That's definitely, it's a very Kojima thing, very Metal Gear Solid 3, where suddenly he started thinking about all these systems that you're like, man, totally, what does this look like to all these characters? We're meant to believe this is a world. Yeah. What does happen there? And again, many of the greatest roguelikes are the games that do acknowledge that, right? And factor in, we think of Hades, and one of the reasons that Hades works is when you come back, everyone's acknowledging it and being like, oh, he's back again. Yeah. And it gives it that whole other feeling, much more real, right? Much more lived it.
Totally.
That sounds sick. And so yeah, thank you so much for all the information about the game. It sounds super cool. I definitely going to be checking it out. I'm sure everyone's going to be as well who's listening. Definitely head over to Steam. And so I know this might be a bit early. We've talked about early access, but any idea of a release date? Will we see that first EA version 2025?
Yeah, so we're planning, and development timelines can always change. My hope is that our early access is released in the summer 2025.
Amazing.
And then like the alpha demo you can play now, and we're getting a lot of wish lists on Steam, and the more that we get, the more comfortable we feel as we continue plowing forward and making this a reality. But the goal is summer 2025.
Oh, amazing. So soon then. I'm sure people are very excited to hear that. And it's funny, we talk a lot about wish lists, right, in games, and like how important wish lists are for, in terms of, it shows enthusiasm, shows investment. But more than that, it's like, man, no doubt, a bit of a reward for a dev to be like, oh God, people actually want to play this. Because
Totally.
Any creative idea, right, you can make it in a vacuum and then go, oh, it was only me? Oh, shit.
Yeah, exactly. And it is very much as we see it, and I share it with the team, it gives that validation of, yeah, we love what we're doing, but people are also interested and they want to continue on, and they want to hear more about what we're doing. And that's where I've found, in building the way that we have, like, it's started with just me and our lead software engineer. Then we brought in a new game developer after I tested the game loop and been like, hey, this is actually a lot of fun. And then we've been able to bring more people and showcase, hey, here's where we're at now, and it resonates. And like recently, we've brought on one of the composers from the Horizon games, who I met with him at Gamescom because he just liked what we were building, and so we could nerd out over classic pixel art RPGs. And he's like, "This is awesome. I want to be involved." And obviously, like, yeah. So it's just bring that together and doing this, having this game out there that can get people excited about this type of game, but it's done in a fresh way. So I think it's striking a really good balance that people are in.
That's amazing. I'm so glad to hear it, man. It looks like everything you said sounds like there's no reason it wouldn't, and it must be so rewarding for you as well to think back and, like, look at that kid playing those games and imagine if he actually could know that, hey, later in life you're going to make one of those.
Totally. And that was the whole idea behind it was, okay, I want to start with designing a game that I would have loved when I was 10 years old. Okay, what would that look like? Knowing how I was playing, how I was geeking out over, what stats my characters would be, writing that in my notebook at school rather than writing down notes, because I was like, oh, if I make my squad with these people with these classes, then I'm going to be a better. So it's like that type of a thing. It's been really cool to see it come to fruition in a way where it's not just me who loves it, but more and more people are getting into it and getting excited about it.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, amazing. Wow, it sounds incredible, man. And well, thank you so much for talking to us about the game today. It's been absolutely amazing. It sounds super cool. I think everything you've said sounds really intriguing. It's like very clear that you've got a great vision for it, but also that you're not committed to some original design that, might not change. Things are going to work and it's going to be flexible until it gets to be the best game possible. Sounds awesome. Where's the best place for people to keep up with updates?
Yeah, so definitely check on Steam. You can wishlist us. Faenoraverse.com is our website, and then you can subscribe to our newsletters on there. There's a little button to subscribe to our Substack, and that's where we'll be releasing more updates. And then we also have a Twitter that's at Faenoraverse on Twitter. I don't think I'll ever call it X, but on Twitter.
It's every IndieViews. It's the same thing. It's always a bit of a like, are either of us going to call it X? And we're like, no, because then no one knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, everyone, go check those places out. Go wishlist the game in particular, and then follow on everywhere. It sounds amazing. Thank you so much for everything today, Nathan. It's been really interesting talking to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a blast.
No, absolutely. And we'll have you back on for the full release. I'm sure we'll be sitting there going, remember the ideas we had back at the start of Early Access? Look at it now.
Totally. Now it's a sci-fi game. How did that happen?
It's turned somehow Cyberpunk 2. No one saw this coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little bit different. So yeah, let's dive into that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Take care.
And that was our interview with Nathan Montgomery of 2TG about the awesome looking Wildlands of Faenora. A massive thanks again from all of us to Nathan for joining me for the episode. It was a ton of fun and loved all the details he shared about the game. As a reminder, keep an eye out this summer, 2025, for that early access release that we talked about, and definitely go check the demo out on Steam right now. Sounds like there's a ton of content in there for you to sink your teeth into. I know these games often have a massively dedicated following, so I really can't wait to see the strategy RPG fans jumping all over this one, just getting super into it. It's going to be a great time. Remember to wishlist the game on Steam if you get a chance. Check them out on socials, especially as you've got no excuse. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of IndieViews, and I hope you join us again for the next one.